Imagine being an orphan, living quietly in a foreign land, with no power, no influence, and no idea what the future holds. Then suddenly, in a twist of fate that no one could have predicted, you are chosen to become the queen of the most powerful empire in the world. It sounds almost like a fairy tale, but the true story behind Queen Esther is far more intense, dangerous, and mysterious than most people realize. Behind the royal crown, the luxurious palace, and the glamorous title of queen was a secret identity that could have cost her everything. Her life was filled with tension, political danger, and a moment where one decision could determine the survival of an entire nation. For centuries, people have told the story of Esther as a story of courage and faith. But when we look deeper, we begin to see a hidden layer that many people overlook. What really happened to Queen Esther? And why does her story still matter thousands of years later? To understand Esther's story, we need to travel back nearly 2,500 years to the height of the Persian Empire, one of the greatest empires the ancient world had ever seen. At the center of this enormous kingdom ruled the powerful king Ahasuerus, widely believed by historians to be the Persian ruler Xerxes the First. His empire stretched across vast territories from India all the way to Ethiopia, controlling dozens of nations and cultures. The king ruled from a magnificent palace in the ancient city of Susa, where wealth, luxury, and absolute authority surrounded him every day. The palace halls were decorated with gold and marble. Servants moved constantly through the corridors, and powerful nobles gathered there to discuss matters of the empire. In such a place, every decision made by the king could change the fate of millions of people. The story begins during one of the king's famous royal banquets. These celebrations were not simple dinners. They were massive displays of wealth and power designed to impress the empire's most important leaders. Nobles, military commanders, and officials gathered for days of feasting and drinking, while the king proudly showed off the riches of his kingdom. During this extravagant celebration, the king made a request that would unexpectedly change the course of history. He ordered his queen, Queen Vashti, to appear before the guests and display her beauty to the crowd. But in a moment that shocked the entire royal court, Queen Vashti refused the king's command. No one in the empire had ever dared to defy the king in such a public way. Her refusal humiliated him in front of his nobles and advisors. Furious and embarrassed, the king made a drastic decision. Vashti would no longer be queen. Just like that, the throne beside the most powerful man in the world became empty. The king's advisors quickly suggested a solution. They proposed that a search be conducted throughout the entire empire to find the most beautiful young women who could potentially become the new queen. Messengers were sent to every province, and many young women were brought to the palace to participate in what was essentially a royal selection process. Among those young women was a Jewish girl named Esther. Her Hebrew name was Hadassah, and she had grown up as an orphan after losing both of her parents at a young age. She was raised by her cousin Mordecai, who cared for her as if she were his own daughter. They lived as part of the Jewish community that remained in Persia after earlier exiles. When Esther was taken to the palace, Mordecai gave her a serious piece of advice that would shape the rest of the story. He told her not to reveal that she was Jewish. In the political environment of the Persian court, revealing such an identity could create suspicion or danger. So Esther entered the palace carrying a secret that no one around her knew. For months, the young women brought to the palace prepared for their opportunity to meet the king. They received special treatments with oils, perfumes, and cosmetics designed to enhance their beauty. Servants assisted them, and the palace provided luxurious clothing and jewelry. One by one, each woman would eventually be brought before the king. Some hoped for glory, others feared the uncertainty of their future. When Esther's turn finally came, she approached the moment with humility and wisdom. Instead of demanding expensive ornaments or special privileges, she listened to the advice of the palace attendants and carried herself with quiet dignity. Something about her presence captured the king's attention. Out of all the women in the empire, the king chose Esther to become his new queen. An orphaned girl from exile suddenly became the most powerful woman in the Persian Empire. But while Esther was adjusting to life in the palace, a dark threat was quietly growing within the royal court. A powerful official named Haman had risen to one of the highest positions in the empire. The king had given him tremendous authority, and people throughout the palace were commanded to bow in respect whenever Haman passed by. Everyone obeyed this command, everyone except Mordecai. Mordecai refused to bow, possibly because of his religious convictions or his unwillingness to show such honor to Haman. When Haman discovered Mordecai's refusal, he became consumed with anger. But instead of targeting Mordecai alone, his hatred grew into something far more dangerous. Haman devised a plan to destroy all Jewish people throughout the empire. He manipulated the king into approving a decree that ordered the extermination of the Jews on a specific day. Once the king sealed the decree with his signet ring, it became law across the empire. When Mordecai learned about the decree, he was devastated. He tore his clothes, dressed in sackcloth and ashes, and sat outside the palace gates as a sign of mourning and desperation. News of his behavior eventually reached Queen Esther, who sent a messenger to ask what had happened. Mordecai explained the entire situation and urged Esther to go before the king and beg for mercy for her people. But Esther faced a terrifying dilemma. Persian law stated that anyone who approached the king without being invited could be executed immediately, even if that person was the queen. Esther had not been called to see the king for 30 days, and approaching him uninvited could mean certain death. Yet Mordecai responded with words that would echo through history. Perhaps she had become queen for such a moment as this. Esther realized that the moment demanded courage greater than anything she had ever faced before. She asked Mordecai to gather the Jewish people in the city and fast for 3 days. During those 3 days, Esther and her servants also fasted, preparing themselves spiritually for what was about to happen. At the end of the fast, Esther put on her royal robes and walked toward the throne room. Every step she took carried enormous risk. Guards stood at attention, the palace hall was silent, and the law of the empire hung over her like a shadow. When the king looked up and saw Esther standing before him, the entire room waited to see what would happen. Then, in a moment that changed everything, the king extended his golden scepter toward her. It was the signal that her life would be spared. Instead of immediately accusing Haman or revealing the plot, Esther invited the king and Haman to a special banquet. During the banquet, the king asked Esther what she wanted, promising to grant her request. Surprisingly, Esther invited them to another banquet the next day. Meanwhile, Haman left the palace feeling proud and honored. Yet when he saw Mordecai again, refusing to bow, his anger returned with even greater intensity. He ordered workers to build a massive gallows where Mordecai would be executed the next morning. But that night, something unexpected happened. The king could not sleep, so he ordered servants to read from the royal chronicles. As they read aloud, they came to a record describing how Mordecai had once uncovered a conspiracy to assassinate the king. The king was surprised to learn that Mordecai had never been rewarded for this act of loyalty. At that same moment, Haman arrived at the palace to request Mordecai's execution. Before Haman could speak, the king asked him an unusual question. What should be done for the man the king wishes to honor? Assuming the king was referring to him, Haman suggested an elaborate ceremony involving royal robes, a royal horse, and a public parade. To Haman's shock, the king ordered him to carry out that exact celebration, but for Mordecai. Humiliated and furious, Haman was forced to lead Mordecai through the city in honor. Later that evening, at Esther's second banquet, the king again asked what she desired. This time, Esther revealed the truth. She explained that a man had plotted to destroy her people and begged the king to save them. When the king demanded to know who would dare such evil, Esther pointed directly at Haman and declared him the enemy. The king was outraged by the betrayal and immediately ordered Haman's arrest. In a stunning twist of fate, Haman was executed on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. Although the decree against the Jews could not be erased, the king issued a new decree allowing them to defend themselves. When the appointed day arrived, the Jewish people fought back and survived the attack. What was meant to be a day of destruction became a day of deliverance. To remember this victory, the Jewish people established the festival of Purim, which is still celebrated today. After these dramatic events, the story grows quieter. Esther continued to live in the palace as queen, while Mordecai rose to become one of the most powerful officials in the empire. Although the Bible does not describe many details about Esther's later life, her legacy remained powerful. She began life as an orphan in exile, yet through courage, wisdom, and perfect timing, she became the woman who saved her people. Her story reminds us that sometimes the greatest acts of bravery happen behind palace doors, in moments when a single decision can shape the destiny of millions. And that is why the hidden story of Queen Esther continues to inspire people around the world even today. One brave decision saved a nation, and it all started with a young orphan who refused to stay silent. If you enjoy discovering hidden Bible stories, like the story of Queen Esther, make sure to subscribe, because the next story might completely change the way you see the Bible.